I grew up in a small town nestled on the Hudson River, Athens, New York. My brother was the mayor. My father was the judge. Kind of unlikely, right? It's a rural area. In fact, by day, my brother and my father ran our family business, and they were general contractors. And this meant that they were paving driveways with blacktop, they were digging foundations, and they were delivering gravel and salt and sand in the company dump truck. My father, by night, would change his work boots and jeans and move into something a little bit more formal because he was going to endless meetings. He served on the cemetery board, the library board. At one point, he was the president of the Board of Education in our area. Oh, and yes, he was also the judge. On Sundays, I'd come down from my bedroom and I'm going to get a snack, and there's people getting married in my living room. I would notice that cars would creep up our long driveway at dusk, and people would get out and slowly make their way around our house to our basement, where there was a back door and my father would hold a small claims court. Or you could go and pay your speeding tickets and parking tickets. The thing is, these multiple roles generated multiple perspectives. And for me and my siblings, we were just, this is life. But one of the things that was interesting is that you saw my father, because of these roles, have relationships across sectors. And these relationships created networks that could be activated in a moment. This is a John Deere backhoe, and it was my father's pride and joy. It was the only piece of equipment he ever bought new. And one day, his garage was right next to the Hudson River, and he happened to be working right next to the backhoe, and no one knows quite how this happened, but the thing just shifted into drive on its own and made a quick circle and then ran off the bank and plunged into the river and sank to the bottom. Now, it was a Saturday afternoon, and I remember being a teenager, I was still asleep, and I heard the screen door slam and a commotion in the kitchen, and I heard my mother gasp, "Oh my God, what happened?" She gasped because my father was drenched. When the backhoe started to move forward, my father panicked, and he ran up and jumped up and ran into the cab and tried to pull the lever back into reverse, and instead, the arm swung around and knocked him into the river. He was drenched. He came home to change his clothes and to make a phone call, and the phone call was to the state police, who he knew well. And he asked the state police, did they have a diver who could go down and dive and put a cable around the backhoe and bring it up to the surface? 2 hours later, a diver showed up, and so did dozens and dozens of people from the community. Business associates, family members, people from all walks of life. They brought equipment if they had it, they brought sandwiches, they brought coffee, they brought support. They worked all night long, and by morning, it was back on dry land. I was just sharing this story again with my brother, and he remembers that it was like a carnival. He said there were so many people there, and the energy was so high. One of the things I've realized is that rural areas have unique relationships that can create these kind of relationship networks. Fast forward several decades, and here I am now again in another rural area. I'm making my work and my life right here in Berkshire County. I'm a professor of arts management at Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. And my deep research has really been looking at not only the role of art in community, but where it can actually begin arts education and arts integration. So when I came to MCLA, my question was, I'm back in a rural area, and I really want to affect change, and I want to do it in arts education. And so I went and I received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, and that grant allowed me to do some research on the question of How can we leverage change in rural areas in arts education? So we interviewed 14 arts education leaders across the country, across 11 states, and produced this report, Leveraging Change, Increasing Access to Arts Education in Rural Areas. And there were a number of things that were really interesting. One thing was that everyone that we interviewed talked about the same exact challenges. And if you live in a rural area, these are going to resonate. Poverty and lack of economic opportunity. Geographic spread, lack of philanthropic funding, transportation, lack of broadband. But there were also unique rural assets that were also shared. And these started with the idea of strong relationships, right? That relationship network. And multiple roles and perspectives, these are assets in rural areas, things that were invisible to me as a kid. Also, the availability of low or no-cost space, the unique geographic feature of your area, and unique community assets. And of course, there were promising practices that emerged. Again, right at the top, networks, relationship networks. Making use of your local assets, defining common goals so you're all moving in the same direction, plugging into initiatives that are working in your area and understanding what they are, connecting educators to the community, mentorships, professional development, and arts integration. So I was really excited to see that arts integration was one of the promising practices. Perhaps most striking, however, is that every time there was a promising practice, it only really took root when people were paying attention to their own unique context. So I started to ask myself, how can I take the idea of these promising practices and apply them to Berkshire County? And this led to a whole series of questions that we're still wrestling with today. What if we documented the unique assets that we have available to us? If I think about my hometown, it's hands down the Hudson River, the spectacular beauty of the Catskill Mountains, the resorts in the summer that bring cultural diversity to the region. If I think about Berkshire County, it's our Berkshire Hills, right? The gorgeous environment and hiking trails and mountains we have here. It's our history of writers and thinkers from W.E.B. Du Bois to Herman Melville. It's those spectacularly beautiful mansions that you find across Berkshire County, built in the 1800s by wealthy folks from New York City, referred to as summer cottages. How many arts, culture, and humanities organizations do you think we have here? Do we have 10? 20? 30? 40? 50? We have over 50 high-caliber art, culture, humanities organizations. It's mind-boggling. If there's anything that we should be claiming, it is this. Certainly our tourists know what we have here. And my goal is to make sure that every young person in Berkshire County gets it as well. What if we created a vibrant network that aligned arts and cultural assets to work together? Think about that. Everyone's doing amazing work on their own. And so one of the things that we did first is we thought, let's have a small convening. Let's bring forward people from different sectors and really think about what does arts education mean and how can that be a strategy? So I hand-selected about 20 organizations. Some of them were arts, most of them were cross-sector, different from arts. And one of the groups I invited was Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. And I never heard back. So another thing that you can do in a rural county is you can pick up the darn phone and get someone to pick up. And so I call then Executive Director Nat Carnes, and I said, Nat, you don't know me, I'm Lisa Donovan, la la la. You never answered my invitation. And Nat said, yeah, arts education's not really my work. And I said, oh. Well, as it happens, we just had a meeting and we brought together different cultural organizations and asked them what the barriers were for youth attending creative youth development programs. Number one on the list, transportation. There was a pause on the phone, and then Nat said, I'll be there. He came, he participated deeply, and he opened his space so that we could have future meetings there. And because of his relationship networks, In 6 months, he opened more doors for me than I'd been able to open in 6 years. Relationships matter. Networks are critical, and cross-sector networks create change. We were really excited to plug into the numerous networks that already exist in Berkshire County. And we knew that the arts and culture organizations were already coming together on a number of things, whether it's marketing and tourism, et cetera. But one place that we weren't so good at coming together was around arts education. And so we have just created something called the Berkshire Cultural Assets Network, and it really focuses through the lens of arts education, and it's a network. It's funded in part by the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation, and we've received a second National Endowment for the Arts Collective Impact Grant. Imagine a wheel, and each of those 50 organizations are a spoke on the wheel. They're all holding up their own piece of the wheel, but at the center is BCAN, and BCAN allows us to align with each other. We're thinking together, we're working together, and we're rolling in the same direction. So now we've taken time to understand our unique context, and now we're building networks and tapping into those existing networks. What if we were to create a common agenda, a shared vision of what we want every young person in Berkshire County to have access to? So we are now creating, with that same NEA grant, a blueprint for arts education. And what's interesting about the blueprint is we're capturing opportunities and also challenges in the region. And out of those opportunities and challenges, we're creating an action plan. Think of it, all of those 50 organizations, no matter what sphere of influence you're working in, can push the needle if we know where we're all going. So what I do in higher ed is going to be different than an arts organization does or a school does, but we can all move the needle together. So to create the blueprint, it was really important understanding the need to have those cross-sector, multiple perspectives and multiple roles. And so we've talked with a zillion people. We've talked with arts organizations, classroom teachers, administrators. We've talked with teaching artists and legislators and workforce development folks and social services. And the list goes on. Because by the time the blueprint's done, we want anyone in the county to be able to say, this stands for me when it comes to what our vision is for arts education. What if we connect educators to community assets, creating opportunities for professional development and mentorship of educators? So we've received another grant from the National Department of Education in collaboration with North Adams Public School Districts and the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts, and we've created BrainWorks, Berkshire Regional Arts Integration Network. This is another piece that's on the ground. It's organized around a research study around how the creative process generates rigor in education. And as a young person, I can tell you that growing up with theater made such a difference in my life. It gave me my leadership skills. It allowed me to sit with ambiguity. It developed my ability to think outside of the box. And perhaps best of all, it allowed me to have tolerance for my mistakes and to see mistakes as research. So part of BrainWorks, we're working with 4 Title I districts, but we also have teachers from across the county. We are moving people around, so we're working on that geographic siloed piece. This summer we had 23 teachers, and we took them to Norman Rockwell and Berkshire Botanical Garden. And one kindergarten teacher said to me, the last time I was at Norman Rockwell, I was 5. And she said, I have to say, it blew me away, all that's there, not just for me as a teacher, but for my kids. This is really important work. Over the fall, we had Saturday workshops, and we took teachers to the Berkshire Museum, to Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival, to Mass MoCA. We engaged teachers in understanding the role of the creative process in their own work so that they'll then share with their students. What if we were a model for intensive arts integration related professional development for public school educators, where we could actually create a climate where creativity is at the core, and we could create links to workforce development and pride in our community? So here, teachers are being asked to do the very same things that they would do with students using flexible strategies. Here are teachers at Mass MoCA, and they are using embodied learning. They're creating frozen pictures called Tableau, and this is useful to recreate a historical moment or a moment in the book or a chemical process. Here we are at Norman Rockwell, where after examining the incredible work that Rockwell did as an illustrator to prompt a question or tell a story or make a statement, and after spending the day there, we tasked teachers with using collage to do that very same thing with the books that they're using in their curriculum. And here we are at MCLA creating rain sticks. And this investigation allowed us to consider what's the relationship between sound waves and music and mathematical prediction. What if there was a one-stop clearinghouse for information? One of the things that we know is that whether it's collective impact or network development, that it will not work if you're not continually communicating. And so we've taken our BrainWorks website and we're using this as an education portal for the arts. So there are tabs for arts educators, youth workers, administrators, arts organizations. You can go on this site and look at network development. You can find out who's an art teacher in a particular school. And we're continuing to build out this site. What if we harness the power of our assets to make this region a hub for immersive cultural experiences for every Berkshire County student? I want you to think about those promising practices. We have taken the time to identify the rich resources of our area in arts, culture, and humanities. We've activated networks and created additional networks to keep the work moving forward. We've taken the opportunity to create a common agenda so that we're all going in the same direction and we can totally move the needle together. We've created opportunities for teachers to gain professional development in deep arts integrated work, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. If you reach a teacher and teachers are integrating, then it will hit every student, right, in Berkshire County. We have to move beyond the reach of our own organization. The resources we have here are mind-boggling. We could be a national model for regional collaboration. We could be the very model that I was looking for and could not find. Our young people could grow up being super proud of growing up Berkshire County. Education here should and could be substantially different than any other place in the state because what we have here. And every young person could benefit like I did by being immersed and having access to the creative process. It's all possible. We have the map, we have the networks, but we need to think like a region. Thank you.